There is a moment most people with diabetes know intimately. It is usually somewhere between 2 and 3 in the morning. You wake up, your mouth is dry, your mind starts calculating. What did you eat? What did you skip? Why is the number always wrong? And you lie there in the dark, doing the math on a body that refuses to cooperate. You have done everything right. You have cut the bread, you have walked after dinner, you have taken every pill on time. And still, the glucose monitor tells a different story every single morning. What if the missing variable was not food, not medicine, not exercise, but something so ordinary, so completely unremarkable that you have been overlooking it for years? What if the timing of when you drink water, not whether you drink it, but precisely when, was quietly shaping your blood sugar in ways no one has ever sat down and explained to you clearly? Here is what most people are never told. Water does not just hydrate you. Inside the body of someone living with type 2 diabetes, water plays an active role in how glucose moves through the bloodstream, how the kidneys filter and remove excess sugar, and how the cells that respond to insulin actually function. When you are even mildly dehydrated, a state that older adults reach more easily than younger ones because the sensation of thirst diminishes with age, your blood becomes more concentrated. Think of it this way. Imagine a garden hose carrying dissolved sugar. When there's plenty of water flowing through, the sugar dilutes and moves efficiently. When the flow slows, the concentration rises. The same principle applies in your bloodstream. A 2021 review published in the journal Nutrients found that chronic low-grade dehydration in older adults was independently associated with elevated fasting glucose and reduced insulin sensitivity. This is not a fringe idea, it is physiology. And because most seniors are already operating in a mild state of dehydration for most of the day, not dramatically, not enough to feel desperately thirsty, but enough to matter, the timing of when you introduce water becomes a meaningful tool. Not a cure, not a replacement for anything you are already doing, a tool used strategically at the right moments in your metabolic day. The protocol described here is called the 12-window method. It does not ask you to drink more water than is reasonable. The total daily intake it recommends, roughly 6 to 8 8-ounce glasses spread across the day, is consistent with standard clinical guidance for adults over 60. What makes it different is the intentionality behind each glass. Each of the 12 drinking windows is timed to correspond with a specific physiological event, a glucose spike, a cortisol shift, a digestive process, or a period of increased cellular insulin demand. You are not just drinking water, you are placing water where the body needs it most at the moment it can do the most good. Window 1 is immediately upon waking, before any food, coffee, or medication. During sleep, the body loses fluid through respiration and mild perspiration. By morning, most people with type 2 diabetes are already behind on hydration. More importantly, cortisol, the hormone that triggers what is called the dawn phenomenon, the natural early morning rise in blood glucose, peaks between 6 and 8 in the morning. Drinking 8 ounces of plain water within the first 10 minutes of waking does two things. It begins reversing overnight dehydration, and it slightly dilutes the blood during the window when glucose is already under upward pressure. Margaret, 67, from Ohio, had fasting readings that hovered between 148 and 162 every morning, despite eating nothing after 7 the night before. Her endocrinologist suggested this single change, water first before anything else, as a preliminary step. Within 3 weeks, her fasting average had shifted between 131 and 144. Not a dramatic transformation, but a consistent, measurable shift from one habit repeated daily. Window 2 falls approximately 90 minutes after breakfast. This timing matters for a specific reason. When the stomach has water in it before food arrives, gastric emptying, the rate at which food leaves the stomach and enters the small intestine, slows slightly. A slower gastric emptying rate means glucose from the meal enters the bloodstream more gradually. Think of a funnel with a wide opening versus a narrow one. Pre-meal water narrows that funnel just enough to reduce the steepness of the post-meal glucose spike. 6 ounces is sufficient here, 8 is fine. More than that can cause discomfort during the meal itself. Window 3 is mid-morning, roughly 90 minutes after breakfast. This is often called the post-absorptive phase, the period when most of the glucose from your meal has already entered the bloodstream and your cells are working to absorb it. Hydration at this point supports kidney function. The kidneys of a person with elevated blood sugar are working harder than normal, filtering excess sugar and excreting it in urine. That filtration process requires adequate fluid. Giving your kidneys the water they need at this window is not glamorous, but it is clinically meaningful. A small glass of water around mid-morning, even if you don't feel particularly thirsty, keeps this filtration system running efficiently. Window 4 is immediately before lunch, using the same 20-minute pre-meal principle established at breakfast. Consistency here is more important than perfection. The goal is to make this timing automatic rather than deliberate. Eventually, reaching for water before sitting down to eat should feel as natural as picking up a fork. Window 5 is mid-afternoon, between 2 and 3 o'clock. This window is chosen for a reason that has nothing to do with food. Early to mid-afternoon is when many people over 60 experience the most significant dip in physical and cognitive energy. This dip is partly circadian, partly the result of the morning's glucose and insulin activity settling. Dehydration during this window amplifies fatigue, and fatigue in this age group often leads to sedentary behavior, sitting longer, moving less, which is itself a driver of afternoon glucose elevation. 8 ounces of water at this window serves as a quiet circuit breaker for that chain of events. Window 6 is 20 minutes before dinner, continuing the pre-meal hydration pattern. By the evening meal, many people over 60 have significantly reduced their fluid intake without realizing it. Social habits, reduced thirst sensation, and the desire to avoid nighttime bathroom trips all combine to create a cumulative dehydration that worsens across the day. Addressing it before dinner is strategically important. Window 7 is with dinner itself. Not a large glass, but a consistent, moderate amount, 6 to 8 ounces sipped gradually through the meal. This isn't about flooding digestion, it's about maintaining the hydration momentum that the earlier windows established. Window 8 comes approximately 60 to 90 minutes after dinner. This is the window that most people skip, and it may be one of the most important. The post-dinner period is when the largest glucose spike of the day typically occurs. The kidneys are working, the liver is processing, and the cells are absorbing the evening meal's glucose load. Water at this stage, not a large volume, but a consistent 6 ounces, supports that processing phase without overwhelming the bladder in the hours before sleep. Window 9 is the evening wind-down, roughly 2 hours before bed. This is a deliberate and smaller serving, 4 to 6 ounces, timed to give the body enough fluid for overnight metabolic maintenance without causing disruptive nighttime bathroom trips. This window is the most sensitive to individual variation. If you already wake at night to urinate, this window should be moved slightly earlier or the volume reduced. The goal is sustainability, not adherence for its own sake. Windows 10, 11, and 12 are what the protocol calls the movement windows. 3 brief, small sips of water timed to any intentional physical activity during the day, a walk after meals, gentle stretching, or any structured exercise. These are not full glasses. They are 4-ounce servings taken before, during, and after movement. Exercise increases the rate at which muscles absorb glucose from the bloodstream, and muscles absorb glucose more effectively when they are adequately hydrated. Dehydration during or around exercise reduces this uptake efficiency. The movement windows are small, but they address a specific and overlooked moment of metabolic opportunity. Here is where it's worth pausing because there's a real risk inside this conversation that must be named directly. Not everyone over 60 should dramatically increase their fluid intake. If you have a history of congestive heart failure, chronic kidney disease, or you are taking diuretics, water pills, for blood pressure or fluid retention, the volume and timing of your hydration must be discussed with your physician before you make any changes. This protocol is not designed for you to implement alone and in silence. It is designed to give you something intelligent and specific to bring to your next appointment, a framework to discuss, a timeline to evaluate, a measurable question to ask. Drinking water at the wrong times in the wrong amounts can create genuine complications for people with certain cardiac or renal conditions. That is not said to frighten you. It is said because you deserve a complete and honest picture, not a simplified one. What this method ultimately offers is not a shortcut, it is a rhythm. Thomas, 71, retired engineer from Pennsylvania, had been living with type 2 diabetes for 11 years. His A1C had remained stubbornly at 7.8, despite medication adjustments and consistent dietary effort. His cardiologist cleared him to try a structured hydration approach, and over 12 weeks, using a version of this timing framework alongside his existing medication regimen, his average fasting glucose dropped from 159 to 138, and his post-dinner readings, historically his worst numbers, fell from an average of 212 to 178. His A1C at his next quarterly check came in at 7.3. Not normal, not cured, but meaningfully better. He described it not as a miracle, but as finding a lever he did not know existed. The 12-window method is that lever. It does not ask you to overhaul your life. It asks you to look at something you already do every day, drink water, and do it with intention at the moments when your body is most ready to respond.